Okay. Good morning. It is coffee chat time. I am Jonathan League. I am a family therapist. I am an addictions counselor. I am the one who has the YouTube channel that you've probably connected with. Just the handle on that is Jonathan League Family Therapist. And then there is the private Facebook group, which is Parents of Adult Children Failure to Launch and Addiction Support. That is something I recommend that you become a part of. You can search that in Facebook. That is a wonderful community that is growing and is building, and a great place to connect with other parents who have young adult children who are struggling, failure to launch, difficult situations, and it's a community where they come together. And maybe not most importantly, but I'm going to say it that way. I want you to get on my email list. Why do I want you to get on my email list? Because my email list is where it happens. That's where I send you tools that no matter what kind of situation you're going on or experiencing with your adult child, right? I'm going to send you tools that apply to that. It's going to help you foundational stuff, like, because it's what you really want. How to have a relationship with your adult child, right? How to rebuild that, how to connect with them, build that connection so that you can finally start talking again. You can finally start reasoning and moving things forward. And then how do you take those conversations forward, right? How do you talk to them about boundaries and about them moving forward in their life? And all of that comes through that email list. And plus, when I do workshops, when I do the coaching groups and things like that, that's where you find out about it, right? The email list. So I will put links. In fact, let me fumble around here just for a moment while we're getting some people on here. And let me see. I think I have it right here. And I'm looking up the. All right, hold on. Let me pull them up here. I should have had that ahead of time, but I did not, so I apologize. Okay. Whoa, dead silence. I apologize. I had those up and then I didn't have them, but I really want to put them in the link so that we can do it. All right, there we go. All right, in the description, in the comments, I'm putting those right now. And in the face. Here we go. Okay. Sorry for that delay, that dead time. But it is just an easygoing morning, right? We're just here to connect and chat. And what are we doing today? We are talking about whatever we need to talk about, but the topic is obviously for parents with adult children, right, who are struggling. They are struggling to move forward. And that's what this chat is about. In the Facebook group, actually, tonight is more of a formal talk and training. We get a little bit more in depth there. And I certainly have my YouTube videos and stuff, but this is just a time to interact. And we just started, right? If you're watching for the first time, you're not too far off because we just started this mid last week, and some people have already been chatting either before or after and asking questions about their situation. And we chat about it, we talk about it. So get your cup of coffee and join in. Question for you. What is a boundary that you have a hard time setting with your young adult child? Right? Or maybe they're not that young, right? I know some parents here, their children are a good bit older, even have kids of their own, but they're still struggling, right? And you're still a parent, and you're wondering, how can I help? How can I help them move forward, right? So what's one of those boundaries that you struggle with, right? And if you're watching this afterwards, go ahead and put that in the comments, right? Because those, I guarantee you're not alone. But I got a different question for you, right? Uh, how hard is it for you to watch your adult child to struggle, right? How hard is it for you to see them struggling? And the reason I ask that is because they're very closely related questions, right? Every parent has some boundary that's difficult. Some situation is difficult for them to hold a line, to back off, to say, no, I'm not going to take care of this for you, whatever it is. Uh, every parent has one of those. And it's usually directly related to it's something that is very difficult, if not seemingly impossible, for them to watch their child struggle, right? And they don't know how to intervene. And so that's a lot of what happens is the struggle, the not being able to handle watching our kids struggle becomes a reason why we don't follow through on our boundaries, on our limits. So is struggle bad? Right? I think anyone who really thinks about that is going to say no, right? Any parent who thinks about that. Uh, and I'll go as far as saying struggle is actually necessary, right? It's a part of growth. It's a part of moving forward. I've said this many times, but think about yourself, right? Think about in your life the times where something seemed so difficult. It challenged you. It challenged you on the inside and maybe on the outside, right? I don't know if I have what it takes to figure out how to get that job or to make that money or to be able to handle this difficult situation, deal with this interpersonal conflict that's happening or whatever it is, right? There was a time it really made you question, do I have what it takes? And then you had to dig deep and you had to seek guidance and you had to struggle through it, and because of that you grew, right? But in the moment it was horrible, it was miserable, it was you didn't want to be in that place. So as parents, we get the privilege, I'll put it that way, of intimately seeing what's going on in our kids' lives, at least part of it. And so we get to see the struggle usually in a way that most other people don't get to struggle or get to see someone struggle. When you live with someone, you see so much more. When you're their parent, you see so much more. Right. So many times what parents experience is it's not just that their kid's struggling, it feels like the parents are having that same experience, that same struggle, the same emotion. But we got to really we got to really look at that process of struggle, that part of the process that is struggle, that uh, it's not all bad, but sometimes it is too much, right? So knowing when to step in, when to help, how to guide is important. But I tell you this, we cannot have the goal to remove all the struggle. A lot of times when I'm working with families, I'm as an outsider who's really getting to know what's going on with that family. I'm able to see things without the emotion usually, right? It's not my kid. It's not me in the situation. I'm not necessarily on the line there. And a lot of times I see that dynamic where parents are trying to set some limits. They're trying to push their adult child forward. And there's a real struggle there, right? Emotionally, they're struggling. They don't know how they're going to accomplish things. And I could see the parents really battling with that, really fretting over, how much their child is struggling. And in those moments, a lot of what's going on with those parents is they don't want to be the bad guy. Uh, they're afraid of their child being angry at them or that they'll pull away, or they're afraid of damaging the relationship, or they feel guilty, like maybe this is my fault, maybe I have something to do with it, right? And then they start worrying about what happens if I don't step in, if I don't, all that's going through the parents' minds. And a lot of times the parents make it about themselves. And what I'm looking at is, what, this is hard to watch. It's hard to watch how much distress this young adult is in, but this is part of the process, right? They need to struggle through this. They need to work through it, and instead of it being removed. So a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm encouraging parents like, no, stand your ground. This is the right thing. You're not being overly harsh. You're not being over cruel. You can't let fear dominate you in that moment. And I try to support those parents, and at the same time encouraging that young person that they can do this, they can make it through this, that this is part of what they need to learn. This is what they need to learn about themselves, and on the other side of it is confidence, is clarity, is peace, and all that good stuff. So it's actually a huge point that I could spend a lot of time on, because it's really a pivotal point in the change process, like moving forward. And even in therapy, it's a huge pivotal point, right? It's when change actually needs to happen. And everyone is trying to avoid the struggle. And they all have their reasons, right? And it's not about whose reason's more valid or rational or irrational. The thing is, they're avoiding the struggle. They're afraid, they're worried, they're scared, they're whatever it is. And that's where a lot of families go back to what they were doing before, right? They avoid it. They don't know how to push through the struggle. So that's the question this morning, right? It's what is an area, either a boundary or a way that maybe your child struggles, that it's difficult to follow through because of that struggle, or it's very difficult to figure out, how do we set that boundary, how do we follow through. And so that's the question while we're having our coffee chat this morning. And by the way, this is part of what we're going to be talking about in the Facebook group tonight. And I will go a little bit more in depth in that Facebook group, the Parents of Adult Children Failure to Launch. So if you're not already on there, get on there, because that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Should be at 7 p.m. I might have to tweak that time a little bit, but I'll put an announcement if I do. But it's normally at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So that's the question. Boundaries, right? What's a boundary that's difficult to set? What is an area or a way that your child struggles that you just can't bear to watch? It's the kind of thing that you just can't help yourself from stepping in. And what most parents do is they either remove the boundary, they rescue, they give one more chance. That's the classic, right? Like, okay, all right, this is too much right now. Let's give it another week. We'll try it again, or we'll try again. I'll pay for you this month, right? I see how distressed you are, and I don't want it to get worse, so I'll pay for it this month. But next month, right? It's that next time, which leads to the next time and the next time, and that alone becomes a pattern. And it's not that your child is directly trying to manipulate you. Sometimes they are, right? They're just truly taking advantage of the situation. But some of it's just kind of this thing that there's always a safety net, right? And it's almost like a learned response. If I just show my emotion, if I show my anger, if I show how difficult this is, I'm ultimately not going to have to follow through yet, right? And it's almost, at times, it's almost like a survival type thing, right? It's the only way they know to survive is to push back and buy some more time, instead of like, okay, no, I can really do this. It's like those videos of someone bungee jumping. I haven't bungee jumped. I don't know if you've bungee jumped, but I have not done that. Don't really have a desire to. But I've watched some of those videos and they're hilarious. Or any activity like that, right? The person, they signed the waiver, they paid the money, they were super excited about it. They got the videos rolling, all their friends are there cheering, watching them, and they're up there like, wait. Before I go, I got one more question. What about this? And okay, 3, 2, wait. And they're stalling, and it's like the panic is kicking in, and it's anything to delay this thing that they know they need to do, or they really wanted to do. But in that moment, it's like a survival mechanism. A panic kicks in. And I see that with young adults, and parents see it, right? They see the fear in their kid's eye. They see the distress of, I really don't want to deal with this. I really don't want to have to go through with this. And in that moment, a parent can't help but, uh, just like connect, as far as, like, I don't want to see them in this kind of panic, but they need to do it. So, unlike bungee jumping, which is truly an optional thing, these are things that ultimately aren't optional, but they can be delayed. And that's where they feel optional, right? But how long are you going to take care of your kids' finances, right? How long are you going to maybe parent their kids for them, right? How long are you going to put a roof over their head? How long are you going to bail them out? How long are you, there's a point when you're not going to be there, right? And then what, right? Well, we don't want it to be those crisis moments. We want to deal with it when it's manageable. But these things are, they truly are their responsibilities. And just because we can take the distress off someone, right? Just because we can delay their struggle a little bit doesn't mean we need to. Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And so maybe that's the bigger message that I'm thinking right now is, uh, just because you can remove the struggle or you can, push things down the road doesn't mean that that's the right thing to do. And that's really where I think I've helped a lot of parents, is for them to truly believe that they're not being the bad person. They're not being unreasonable. They're not being cruel when they enforce boundaries, when they say, look, this is your life. It's not mine. I can't do this for you anymore. Right? Those kind of moments, because the kids, especially if it's been going on for a long time, they expect it, right? Maybe they even have kind of a distorted sense of boundaries, right? People have been doing this so long for me, I believe that they should just keep doing it for me, right? That's just how it works. Uh, so you're not being overly cruel when you set those boundaries. In fact, I believe it's ultimately one of the most loving things you can do, because on the other side of it is your kid grows. They become more mature. They become more responsible. They take things on, and on your side of it, you grow too. As a parent, you're allowed to have your life, right? You're allowed to focus on your goals and desires and things in your life. You're allowed to do that, right? And so when boundaries are messed up, we don't know who's taking care of who, right? And we lose ourselves in that. So the question is, if anyone has a chat, it's what's a boundary that's hard for you, right? If anyone has a comment, what is a boundary that is hard for you to follow through with? Or what is an area or a way that you see your child struggle that is just too much for you to take, or seemingly too much for you to take, right? For some parents, that's when um, they start accusing the parents, right? They start telling them how cruel and horrible they are, and the parents can't put up with that. Maybe it's when the kids completely break down. I know self harm and suicidal ideation talk, right, is a hard thing for a lot of parents, right? They worry about that, or when their kid starts talking about, like, I just can't take this anymore, it's too much. That's a point where parents are like, well, I mean, I've literally had parents tell me that they'll say it like this: I will do this thing that I am doing that I should not be doing. I will do that to the end of my life for my kid if that keeps them from killing themselves or keeps them from harming themselves or something like that, right? Because in the parent's mind, it's one or the other, but that's a false choice, right? It's either I do this or they're going to harm themselves. And if that's really the choice in that moment, right, your safety is the priority, but you're stuck in that. And I've absolutely seen some individuals, some adult children, use that to their advantage. They realize that that is a breaking point, and they will they will literally pull that card out as their last card, or some of them it's one of their first cards. Like, well, you do that, then my life's worthless, and I'm going to kill myself. We don't want that to happen. That's a very serious statement. But is that really where they are? And if it is, then they need help too, right? Because they're going from, well, either I avoid this or I'm going to harm myself, right? There's a lot in between there, right? We need to talk about it. The biggest thing with that, the biggest thing in those type of situations is they become conversation stoppers, right? That they can't talk anymore because they got to this impasse, right? It's, there's these 2 points, and there's no way to talk around it, and then it just goes back to the way it was. So that's where you need help in how to talk through those things. My coffee is extra good this morning. I hope you have a nice, good cup of coffee with you. This is just coffee chat. I have been chatting way too much, and that's okay. But eventually, because we just got this started, right? We're not even a full week into doing this, but I want to get a little bit more chat going because that's what it's about, right? Just a time for you to come in and ask questions about this topic. We've got a lot of group members, and we're going to get them over here too. But it's a time to chat. And yeah, we're talking about boundaries. So let me talk about this. When it comes to boundaries, what I see a lot of parents go to really quickly is parents say, okay, well, we can set that boundary. We can say that they have to do this or that they can't do this or, whatever it is. But what's the consequence going to be? And a lot of times parents are coming to me in the moment, like, okay, we set this boundary and they didn't follow through. They didn't do it. So, like, what's the consequence? That the reason you're asking that is because you don't know. And the reason you don't know is because that wasn't talked about ahead of time, right? Though that whole situation has to change. And that's another thing that I do with families, right? As we go from uh, like setting boundaries, being reactive is what it is. Going from being reactive, like we're not really going to talk about things, and then when something happens the way it's not supposed to, then we're just going to react to it. Switching from that to being proactive. So it's how you set that whole thing up. It should be a conversation in the beginning that really involves your adult child, right? It's not just a one-way conversation. It's where you say, hey, here's how you need to move forward. Here's what you need to be taking responsibility of. And this is why, right? This is why you need to be doing this or changing this behavior or doing this thing. And this is what it's all about. And if you do change, here's what it looks like, which is usually more of a version of everything's good, everything's fine. We just carry on as normal. Like you're going to have more freedom, you're going to have more, um, more benefit, right? A good result from that. And here's what it looks like if you don't, right? And most of that has to do with adult children. It has to do with levels of support, like what you're going to do and what you're not going to do for your kid. Those are the things that need to be talked about ahead of time. Right? And so when parents say, well, what's the consequence? I say, what was the agreement? Right? Was there a clear conversation beforehand? Right? Did they know what was expected? Did they know what you were willing to provide, what you weren't willing to provide? You know, did they know what was going to happen if they didn't follow along with the agreement? That's what it's about, right? And being prepared ahead of time. And honestly, that's a lot of what we talk about in the group. And when I do my workshops and do the trainings and the coaching and all that, we get into the very specific things. Because right now, there could be 1,001 different particular situations that people could bring up. But what we're talking about is, um, how do you get more specific on those things? So, All right. Well, I wonder if you guys are getting the weather like we are. I think there's a lot of weather moving across the whole U.S. right now. I was worried a little bit about the internet, to be honest with you, that we were going to get some storms that knocked it out. That's happened a few times recently, but so far so good, and I'm liking that. So today, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about, right? I just wanted to introduce that idea. So if you were watching at any point or even afterwards and that is resonating with you, I would love to know your comments, right? Because I know that's an area that parents struggle is how do we set those boundaries? How do we deal with the struggle? How do we handle those moments when they're resisting, when they're pushing back? And I want to know, what are those difficult times for you? What are those moments, right? And and then we change the way we view struggle, right? That struggle is not something to be feared. It's not a reason to back off. It's actually a part of the process, right? And a lot of the struggle is another one of those conversation starters. You know what? I just had a good idea. That would probably be a good talk to give is conversation stoppers, right? The or conversation enders. I like stoppers better. It's these moments where families get stuck and they can't talk, and struggle, versions of struggle, is a big part of that, right? Um, there's too much distress, there's too much tension, there's too much emotion, and uh, people they view it as okay, this is really bad because it's a change in state. Right? One moment everything's fine, like no one's fighting, we're getting through the day, even if there's an underlying tension, right? It's not in the forefront, right? We're not addressing what needs to be addressed, and everything's fine until we bring this up, until we talk about this thing, right? And so it can, by its very nature, it can feel like something wrong happened, right? So everything was calm, it was kind of status quo anyway, and then it's blowing up or it's changing. Maybe we did the wrong thing by talking about this or bringing it up or following through or saying that we're going to follow through on what we said we were going to follow through on, right? And no, that it's not necessarily bad unless you're approaching it in an unhealthy way, right? You're approaching it with anger, or blame, or shame, or being passive aggressive, something like that. And that stuff happens, but that usually happens because things have built up and they weren't addressed at the right time, right? So when you're bringing it up in the right way, viewing it as the struggle's good, right? This is a part of the process, right? We can't have change without having this difficult conversation and people wrestling through this. So that is um, that's one of those conversation stoppers, right? So yeah, I might do that. I might talk about what are the ways that the conversations stop and how to push through. Let me know what you think of that idea. Uh, I kind of like that. I think that would be a helpful one. I'll have to remember that. Hey, and did you notice we actually started the closest to on time that we've done it yet, um, with the coffee chat this morning. The first morning I did it, I think I was 40 minutes behind just because I thought I knew how to get everything started with the chat features, and then it didn't happen. Um, and then I got it down to 10 minutes, and then I think we were maybe like 2 minutes this morning. So all right, I'm going to wrap up unless there's any comments that pop up. But here is what I want to leave you with. First of all, these situations are difficult, and I never want to make light of it or make it sound like it's easy. Right? There's definitely ways to move forward. There's definitely ways to approach it, and I want to speak that truth. But I know it's a struggle, and on the side of that struggle, it's a different kind of struggle, right? It's a struggle just to be in this whole situation. and I don't want you to give up. As a parent, I don't want you to give up. I want you to keep trying. I want you to keep moving forward, and I want you to be equipped and knowledgeable and know that you are not alone. So, this is one more way that we can connect and talk about these things in this chat. So, I'm going to continue to do this. It's going to be 10:30 in the morning. And bring your questions, because that's more of what I intended this to be. It's a chat. It's a back and forth, and um, we're willing to do that. And if you want to be more in the private group, the private conversation and community, get in that Facebook group. The link is in the description, and also the email list. Those are both very good to be a part of. So thank you very much for being a part of this. Today's topic was about boundaries. It was about struggle, but it was really more about why we don't follow through, right? How we view struggle and how it keeps us from pushing through those boundaries. So I appreciate everyone who's being a part of this, and feel free to join us in future times. And I will be signing off with that. And don't forget your coffee next time. Hey, I am Jonathan, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you this morning. You guys take care.